Hi, welcome to this AQA A-Level Business revision video focusing on 3.7.8 Investment Appraisal. We're going to be focusing on average rate of return, payback and net present value in today's video. A reminder that my teaching here is in no way affiliated with any school or federation or anything to do with my job around the country. My name is Mr. Giles. Let's get down to business. Before we kick off with the calculations, let's just first revisit why we're doing investment appraisal in the first place. Now, it's highly likely that this will come up in paper 2 or paper 3. It usually comes up paper 3. And the general discussion is the business that we have a case study about has some sort of change in strategy that they want to do, and they're going to implement something new, and we have to work out whether or not that is a good idea. So we have 3 tools at our disposal. They generally ask you to do 2 of them, and then you use them, and then it helps you often in the 20 or 24 mark question that says, should they or shouldn't they? Now, this used to be very, very prevalent back in the old A-level spec from about 7 years ago, and it would come up in every paper 3, but unfortunately now it's a little bit more sporadic. However, it does often pop up in paper 1 as a multiple choice 2, or even just as a short calculation. So it's worth knowing your calculations. So let's start with average rate of return. Now, what I want you to remember first of all is that average rate of return is the metric we would use to replace return on capital employed. When we calculate ROCE, return on capital employed, ROCE, we're doing it for what the business has done. So we take a look back in time of the year of the business and see how they got on. And that's how we do that. Average rate of return is looking forward in time and says, well, this particular investment, this particular factory, machine, shop, whatever it is going to generate me this potential return. So in the exam, if you've got access to ROCE and you've got ARR, you can compare them. And you can say, well, the current ROCE is 5%, the average rate of return is 7%, that's a 2% improvement. Yeah, absolutely, this is a good investment. If you don't have ROCE, then that is a great it depends. So you write your paragraph and you say, hey, yeah, totally, a 7% ARR sounds really reasonable. However, it depends on what their current ROCE is because we don't know it. If their current ROCE is 12% and they've got an ARR of say 7, that's no good for anybody. So that's where it's going to be used and that's how it's going to be used. That nuance is probably far more important than the actual calculation itself. So I like to treat this as a 3-step process. The formula's here, so you can see here in blue, the average rate of return is seen as the average yearly profit divided by the investment times by 100. It's important you remember that, but unless you know the steps how to get there, it's not really going to help you. So this is a 3-step process, and I want you to remember that so that when you're doing it, you've got to remember, okay, have I done all 3 steps? If you haven't, just know Mr. Giles is not happy. So first of all, we have to calculate the profit of our investment. I've done a very simple table here. You can see hopefully that the investment here is 50 million, whatever. Okay. This investment's going to last for 3 years. Each year is going to generate 20 million revenue or 20 million profit. Sometimes they'll put another column here and this will be inflows and that will be outflows. You simply take them away from each other. I've just kept it simple here and just given you how much money it generates per year. So over here in pink, you can see I've added my 3 20s together to get me to 60. So the total revenue, profit, whatever you want to say, the total inflows for this project is 60 and it's cost me 50. I must take the 50 away. There's a very common misconception. People always forget that step. So I'm 60 coming in. It cost me 50 to get it going. Therefore, my profit for this venture is 10 million, 10,000, whatever. Step 1, calculate the profit. Inflows minus the investment. Step 2, I need to calculate my average yearly profit. Well, I take my 10 profit and I simply divide it by the number of years, 1, 2, 3. So 10 divided by 3, and I've just rounded it up to 3.34 just to make life a little bit simpler. Okay? So the average yearly profit for this investment is 3.34 million per year. So it's 10 overall, divided by 3, 3.34. Step 3, now I can calculate average rate of return. I take my 3.34, I divide by my original investment, which is 50, and that times by 100, and that gets me a 6.68% average rate of return. So on average, this investment is going to give me almost a 7% return on the 50 million that I put in at the start. All right. Now I'm going to get my money back. I know I am, because it makes 60 and it cost me 50. I know I'm going to get my money back. So beyond that, it's going to generate an extra 7% of the value I put in every year. Now, if we compare that with, say, interest in the bank, if I put my 50 million in the bank and I'm getting, say, 5% interest, this is a better option. There's risk involved, sure, but it's a better option. Okay. If I compare it to, say, my Rocky or some other venture, then I've got better use of comparison. So 3-step process: calculate the profit. Please don't forget to take away the investment, divide it by the number of years, then divide it by the investment, times by 100. There is your average rate of return. Let's move on and have a look at payback. Okay. So let's look at payback. Payback is how quickly that we can expect to receive our investment back. Before we do the calculation, the notes on this are super important. The longer it takes to get paid back, the inherently higher risk there is to this idea. So if it takes 4, 5, 6 years to recoup all of the money from this investment, that is an exceptionally risky strategy, because no one can predict what will happen in 5 years' time. No one can even predict what's going to happen next week. And the longer it rolls on, the more the external environment is going to have a negative impact on the investment. So that's what I like about, or like writing about payback, because if you've got 2 projects and one's got a shorter payback period, that is a far lower risk strategy, which, depending on the context of the case study, might be the right one. If this is a business that's not doing very well, which in paper 3 often is, then the lower risk strategy is always the better choice. So we know that we want to look for the lower risk. All we need to work out is how many years and days, or years, weeks, years, months, whatever you want to do, what period of time it takes to recover the initial investment. And I like to frame it like this. The initial investment is the money I'm going to borrow from the bank. So how quickly can I pay back the bank? Okay. So again, we're using the same example as previous. We've got year 0, I owe the bank 50 million. And then every year, my project makes 20 million. Nothing's changed. And what I like to do, this is how I like to do my payback, because this represents what happens in my calculator, okay? You can do it on the page as well. Is all I do is I add the money coming in to what I owe the bank. I keep adding it until I get to a point on my calculator where the number on my calculator is less than the number I'm about to add. And in that instance, I do a divide. Okay, so let me run you through it. The pink is my calculator, it's what's happening. So in year 0, I owe 50 million. It's in brackets, I owe 50 million. So in year 1, at the end of the year, I've earned 20 million and I pay that 20 million back to the bank. So now I owe the bank 30 million. In year 2, I earn another 20 million. So after that year, I pay that 20 million back to the bank. Now I owe the bank 10 million. So far it's taken me 2 years. In the 3rd year, I'm also going to earn 20 million. Well, hang on, I only owe the bank 10 million. So I'm going to pay the bank back somewhere in that 3rd year. And I want to find out when. I want to be accurate. So I take the 10 that I owe the bank and I divide it by the 20 I'm going to make. And then I times it by a denominator. I'm going to do 365 because I like it in days. You could do 52 for weeks. You could do 12 for months. Now, the eagle eye amongst you will realise that 10 divided by 20 is a half, okay? And then what we're going to get is half times 365, so half a year, so it would be 6 months, or however many weeks that is, I can't do that quick maths, 26 weeks, or 183 days. So I'm going to get paid back, or I'm going to pay the bank back in 1, 2 years, and 183 days into the 3rd year. Okay, I'll do it one more time. I owe the bank 50, but I pay it back 20. Now I owe the bank 30. I pay it back another 20. Now I owe the bank 10. Well, I'm going to make 20, so I'm going to pay the bank back somewhere in this year. Let's find out where. I take my 10, I divide it by my 20, and I times it by 365 to get the number of days. And I will have paid the bank back on the 183rd day of the third year. So in 2 years and 183 days, I will have fully paid back the bank. That's payback. And a reminder, the longer it takes to pay back, the more risk that's involved. Last one, net present value. So net present value looks at the impact of inflation on our investment, because money earned today doesn't buy me the same things as money earned in the future. And what I mean by that is, if I had 20 million today, I might be able to buy myself a nice 20 million pound house. In 3 years' time, that 20 million pound house will probably be up on the market for, say, 21 or 22 million because of inflation. House prices go up, car prices go up, everything goes up because of inflation. So if you have 20 million this year, that does not buy you the same amount of things next year, the year after, in 5 years' time. So we use these things called discount factors. And what it does is it shows the impact of inflation. And it says, well, okay, you think in 3 years' time, you're going to earn 20 million. Well, that 20 million will only be worth X amount of money. It will only buy you X amount of things because the price of everything has gone up. So what it does is it shows you a true reflection of how much your investment return is actually going to be worth. Let's demonstrate it and hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. So nothing's changed again. I've got my 50 million investment and my 20 over 3 years. Nothing's changed. What I do have now are these discount factors, and these discount factors will be given to you. You don't have to know them. You can you can Google them and you can find them. They're a mathematical calculation, and they basically work out what happens if you discount something by a particular percentage over a period of time. I've used 3% because it's the most common one. Inflation usually sits on average around 3%. So what we do is we take the inflow of money we're going to get at 20 and we just times it by this discount factor, and then it will give us what that money will be worth. So in a year's time, when we've earned 20 million pounds, we times it by 9709, and it's actually only going to be worth 19.4 million. So a 20 million in a year's time will only be worth 19.4 million. And then we carry on. 20 million in the second year times 9426 is only actually worth 18.9 million. So if I earn 20 million in 2 years' time, it will only buy me 18.9 million pounds worth of stuff. It actually isn't worth 20 million. And then the third year, 20 million times 0.9151, and it's only actually worth 18.3. So you can see in 3 years' time, that 20 million I'm going to generate loses 2 million of value due to inflation. Okay. And it doesn't sound that outlandish when you think about it. And if you ask any of your teachers, ask them how much the price of a Freddo was when they were a kid. Because when I was a kid, a Freddo was 5p. I think we're knocking on 25p now. All right. So that is almost like a 500% increase. Okay. So, and that's over the course of, well, I'm old, so a while. Okay. So what we do is we times them together to give us our net present value inflows. And that gives us, we add them up down here. So previously, if we added 20, we were told that, or we calculated that we were going to get 60 million coming in. When we actually take into consideration inflation, that 60 million is only actually worth 56.6 million in 3 years' time. And then we do what we should always do. We take that money and we take away the investment because we've got to pay for our investment. And we're left with 6.6 million profit. If you remember correctly from average rate of return, we actually calculated we would earn 10 million profit, 60 minus 50. That 10 million is only going to be worth 6.6 million in 3 years' time. Now, my example here has got a very constant inflow of 20 million a year. When this gets really interesting is, if you can imagine, when you get something going in a business, it doesn't always take off straight away. It might take off in 2 or 3 years' time. If this wasn't 20, imagine it was 5, 15, 35, okay, or 45, and it made all of its money in year 3. That could be a problem, because that's when inflation has truly tripled, because we've gone over 3 years. So it may well make all of its money down here, but it's going to be hit with the biggest impact of compound inflation. So any investment that makes its money later in the life cycle of it is at risk of being impacted by inflation. Okay, so we simply take this, we times it by this, and that gives us the actual net present value of that money after inflation has been considered. So those are your three. You've got average rate of return, which is very similar to ROCE. So what is this investment going to get us back every year on return? We have payback. How quickly can we pay back the bank for the money that we're going to borrow? And then is there risk in that? And then net present value. When does the project make its money? Is it going to be impacted by inflation? Because if it is, then it might not be worth doing it, because money tomorrow is not worth money today. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments down below and I will try my best to get to them, and I will see you in the next one.